This presentation summarizes a study of the migration of hummingbirds. It is believed that the first hummingbird population developed in South America after arriving from Asia 22 million years ago. Once they spread through South America, a few species began to move to Central America, the Caribbean, and eventually mainland North America. By migrating to areas with more abundant food, these little explorers had less competition for food and territory. Of course, the seasonal cooling also drove these species south every fall. This cycle of advancing and retreating with the seasons is the basic foundation of their migration pattern. There are currently over 300 recognized hummingbird species, but only 12 to 15 will regularly migrate into the United States, and even fewer continues all the way north to Canada. Although there are differing views in the birding community as to what triggers the start of migration, it is generally thought that hummingbirds sense changes in daylight duration and changes in the abundance of flowers, nectars, and insects. Instinct also plays a role in making a decision to migrate. During migration, a hummingbird's heart beats up to 1,260 times a minute, and its wings flap 15 to 80 times a second. To support this high energy level, a hummingbird will typically gain 25 to 40% of their body weight before they start migration in order to make the long trek over land and water. They fly alone, often on the same path they have flown earlier in their life, and they fly low, just above treetops or water. Hummingbirds fly by day when nectar sources such as flowers are more abundant. Flying low allows the bird to see and stop at food supplies along the way. They're also expert at using tailwind to help reach their destination faster, which allows them to consume less energy and body fat. Research indicates a hummingbird can travel as much as 23 miles in one day. However, those that make the 500-mile flight from Florida to the Yucatan do it in 18 to 22 hours nonstop, depending on wind conditions. This map shows the approximate breeding ranges for 4 major hummingbird species in North America: Rufous, Anna's, black-chinned, and ruby-throated. Of course, actual breeding areas vary by year, depending on the weather and other environmental factors. Also, there is overlap in some areas, such as in central Texas, where ruby-throats and black-chin can also be found frequently at the same areas. Hummingbirds are known to return to the same location from one year to the next, even to the same feeder. If these feeders are not out, the hummingbird may leave to look elsewhere and never return. After all, these small birds cannot live more than a few hours without nectar. Some studies have also found that a good white flower crop will reduce the number of hummingbird visits to feeders. Ruby-throated hummingbird first arrives in spring. Usually males are back in Texas and Louisiana from late February to mid-March. In more northern states, first arrivals are not until April or May. This map shows the approximate spring migration arrival dates for ruby-throated hummingbirds in North America. Arrival dates vary from year to year and from location to location, depending on the number of weather-related conditions and other environmental factors. By August and September, hummingbirds are moving south, refueling their bodies in the early morning, traveling midday, and foraging again in the late afternoon to maintain their body weight. August brings lots of activities. Around 10 to 20 ruby-throated hummingbirds at a time, with peak numbers in early September, when as many as 25 to 40 hummingbirds at a time can be spotted as part of their fall migration. These are mostly ruby-throats, with an occasional rufous in the mix at the feeder. Ruby-throats gather in Florida, Louisiana, and along the South Texas coast in September in preparation for the final push to the south, either over the Gulf of Mexico or via an overland route through Mexico. Some ruby-throats do spend the winter along the U.S. Gulf, from Texas to Florida, and some along the southern Atlantic coastal regions. Other species travel south down the Rocky Mountain chain into Mexico and Central America. Hummingbirds are overwintering in the Gulf Coast in greater numbers than in the past, and many can be found at feeders in South Texas and South Louisiana during mild winters. For example, in South Louisiana, several species are often spotted during the winter months, including the ruby-throated, rufous, black-chinned, calliope, Allen's, broad-tailed, and Anna's. A few hummingbird species are year-round residents in the warmer Pacific coastal and southern desert regions of the United States. Among these are Anna's, a common residence from California inland to Arizona and north to British Columbia. Rufous hummingbirds are wide-ranging and breed further north than any other hummingbird, even into southeastern Alaska. They're often seen in the spring in California, summer in Pacific Northwest and Alaska, and fall in Rocky Mountain. They spend their winter non-breeding months in southern Mexico. Periodic rufous sightings in winter are made along the U.S. Gulf Coast, and even into areas like South Carolina and Tennessee. During their long migrations, rufous hummingbirds make a clockwise circuit up western North America each year. They move up the Pacific coast in late winter and spring, reaching Washington and British Columbia by May. As early as July, they may start heading south again, traveling down the chain of Rocky Mountains. This map shows the approximate migration and breeding ranges of the rufous hummingbird in North America. Of course, actual ranges may vary year to year and can depend on the number of weather-related conditions and other environmental factors. Coastal hummingbirds are small North American desert birds that inhabit the western United States and Mexico, but are known to wander eastward and as far north as Alaska and Canada. They're closely related to Anna's hummingbirds. Their most common breeding areas are the Mojave Desert, Sonoran Desert, and the San Joaquin Valley of California. Their wintering areas include Southern California into Mexico. The Allen's hummingbird is a remarkably early migrant compared with other North American birds. Allen's hummingbird move north up to the Pacific coast in late winter and south through the mountains in late summer. A close relative of rufous hummingbird, Allen's, has a more limited range, nesting mostly in California. The black-chinned hummingbird breeding range stretches from southern British Columbia in Canada through Idaho and Nevada, south to northern Mexico, and from coastal California, Arizona through Texas, where they're relatively common spring and summer residents. They have also been reported in a number of other states. They migrate through Southern California, southern Arizona, and southern Texas, or Mexico for the winter. The calliope hummingbird is the smallest bird native to the United States and Canada. Calliope hummingbirds primarily breed at high elevations in the mountains of northwestern United States and Canada into Alaska. During spring and summer, they travel through Arizona and New Mexico and northern Mexico. In winter, however, they can be seen in northwestern Mexico as well as Guatemala and Belize. Broad-tailed hummingbirds migrate north in the spring, leaving behind the non-migrant populations in central Mexico. During spring migration, males reach southern Arizona in late February or early March, northern Arizona in early April, Colorado in late April to late May, Wyoming in mid-May, and Idaho and southern Montana by late May. After breeding, broad-tailed hummingbirds start their southbound migration into their winter range in the highlands of Mexico, south to Guatemala. There are still more questions than answers about hummingbird migration. Until technology provides radio transmitters small enough for a 3-gram hummingbird to carry safely, banding is the best tool to collect data on individual birds. This page includes the websites and resources that I used for this presentation, with Sherry L. Williamson, A Field Guide to Hummingbirds of North America being the main resource used for this presentation.